And I might at first think, oh no, then there is no such thing as nirvana. There's just being resigned to this world. But then at least if you're resigned to this world, you're not trying to escape from it. And so then you sort of take it in stride with that resignation. Maybe that's what nirvana means. No, that's not what it means. It's much more interesting than that. That's what modern Buddhists tend to think. Oh, nirvana is when I'm just resigned to being like stuck in samsara. Go and cut some wood, draw some water, and I'm just here, and what the heck. That's what nirvana is. No, that's completely selling it short. Nirvana is permanent bliss, peace, complete, infinite, eternal, beyond all of this. And it's, but what, and it is here now, actually, according to enlightened beings. We, you know, since it cannot be a place apart, since it is actual reality, ultimate reality, infinite reality, unmade, uncreated, unborn, but here, therefore, it's here now. And therefore, when achieving it is not a matter of going somewhere else, it's a matter of really understanding what is here now, fully. Not resigning to a misperceived here now where it's me versus the world and everybody's all separated and all kind of irrational things, and there's a lot of nothings creeping around in which you might fall into if you get into the wrong singularity or something. But no, it's the actual fabric of all of this interwovenness is this nirvana. And my job is to become more and more realistic and more aware of it until I realize that's what this is. And when I do realize that that's what this is, when I remove myself the misrealization, the misunderstanding that this is something else, it will be an experience of something I always knew. Because it was not a new thing, in other words. I'll realize that I was always in touch with it, actually. I was just, I had built some sort of strange superstructure of not being where I was. Something like that. You follow me? And then that means that other beings are also in it now too. So that means that I and the other beings are really, when we really understand the world, we realize we are all totally interconnected with each other completely. There's no separation of ourselves from each other, which doesn't demolish our relational individuality necessarily, except whenever it's pleasant to do so temporarily. But it means that there's no real difference between us. You know, like I'm different. When I'm thinking of myself as the talking, yakking, thinking, you know, five senses sort of in my head or in my chest, it's different from my hand, but also that we are one thing too. My hand is part of me too. And when you feel like that about someone else, that's when you realize that the situation is actually nirvanic and not samsaric. Strange as it may sound. So therefore, this then becomes this idea of the bodhisattva. Then this becomes the universal vehicle. It isn't really that you're saying, I'm going to be so nice and so great that I'm not going to seek my own liberation, and you know, I'll postpone it and I'll just go and help others. That's sort of it's put that way sometimes, and that's like a kind of altruistic and nice emotional way to put it. But it doesn't really work like that. What it works like is, I realize that I am the other people, and they are me. And so as their misery and my misery are empathetically intertwined, and therefore for me to really have freedom from suffering, they have to have freedom from suffering. And therefore we better acknowledge that we're in a universal vehicle. There is no other vehicle. You follow me? Universally, we're all in the same subway car, you know. This is the realization of, so it's very logical, therefore. You know, like in Western psychology, a messianic complex, I don't know what's the matter with my voice. I told you I had 19 meetings today, but never mind, I'll labor through. The messianic complex is considered a kind of dementia, right? Oh, you're going to save the world? Okay, here, have some Librium or Prozac or whatever, you know? And calm down here, go over there in that ward and sit there next to Napoleon, Jesus, Josephine, and whoever. So, because that's only logical, because someone says they're going to save the world, and actually you think they only have one life that they live, and their parents messed them up when they were little, and then they're going to drop dead and be nothing. There's no way to save the world. There's no time. The world is a huge, big, objective thing. You think material things, so naturally that's crazy. But from the bodhisattva point of view, from the enlightened individual vehicle point of view, when you recognize your interwovenness with all life as a reality, not as a kind of, oh, it's so nice of me to be interwoven, as a reality, we are interwoven, it then becomes strictly logical, right? You follow me? Like here we are now, I always use this analogy, and some of you who are old friends have heard it many times, I apologize, but the new people, I've used this. We're here now in this room, you're listening to me at the moment, we'd talk sometimes. If I ever run out of steam and ask you a question, which I should, but I don't enough, because it's only a short time we have, and then we leave and we never see each other, or maybe we come to another class or whatever. And so, that's it. But if for any reason, in some circumstance, we were to become aware of the fact that we would never get away from each other. You went there to this one class and then you discover you can never leave. And I went there to give one class and I discovered I can never stop. And also I need to learn for a lot of things from you. And then we become completely stuck together, so to speak, in the case of the vision of the Buddhist science, nature of reality, forever. But anyway, for a very long time, we will then have a very different attitude toward each other, right? Doesn't mean necessarily, we will realize that we won't be able to tolerate anybody being really freaked out, really angry with other people. We're all stuck together. I use the example of the mad scientist who takes a subway car full of New Yorkers who are in that space together with minimal mutual involvement as possible, all reading their book and newspaper to avoid looking at anybody else, not wanting anybody else to look at them, and looking behind them when they get off to make sure nobody follows them, and, really freaked out and paranoid about each other. And that's the New York thing, right? Because you'll never see anybody in that car again. You sincerely hope. And suddenly, mad scientist takes that car and spirits it away and locks it up to watch an experiment and see how people's attitudes change when they're locked up together for potentially life. And they have to deal with each other. Then how do they change? Suddenly everyone would become very important to you in that car. Maybe some you'd be worried would be enemies, or it would be crazy, or it would be a pest, so you'd want to avoid. Some would be friends, but you'd completely bond in a whole different way with them. And obviously the ultimate way, the optimal way of being with everyone in the subway car would be where everybody in the car was happy and contented. And everyone wanted you, and most important, they were so happy and contented, they all wanted you to be happy and contented. And so you had everyone else in the car wanting you to be happy and contented. You wanted all of them to be happy and contented, because everyone wants everyone to be happy and contented. That's the optimal way of being, isn't it? Could there anything be better than that? The opposite is our samsara. Each wants ourselves to be happy, and we're afraid if someone else is happy, they're going to take away ours. And so we don't want them to be happy. How happy do you want anybody you know to be? Think about it. Be honest. Your husband, your wife, your child comes in. I'm so happy. What did you drink? What did you take? Where have you been? You're merely freaked out. And you want to know what's wrong with them. And then, if you really believe that they're happy for all innocuous causes, you then feel jealous that you're not just as happy. Well, what about me, you say? What about me? Why aren't I happy like you? You didn't make me happy, you're just happy. And then, of course, you're like hell-bent to bring them down. So that's the pessimal way to be, where we are like that. Therefore, no one lets anybody else be happy. They feel threatened by it. Right? Whereas optimal is everyone is happy. And when they're happy, and that's why, it isn't some saintly thing to want your enemy to be happy, which means love your enemy. Because why? Why is your enemy your enemy? He's your enemy, or she's your enemy because she thinks or he thinks that you're a block to their happiness. You're taking their oil, or you're like taking their thing, or you're going to drop a bomb on them, or you're going to do something to block their happiness. Because they don't have enough happiness, so they think by getting rid of you, they'll be happy. So if they are totally happy, they're not going to be your enemy. Why would they bother? That would spoil their happiness to have an enemy. So you want your enemy to be happy, so they'll leave you alone and stop being your enemy. I mean, altruism, enlightened altruism has enlightened self-interest completely fused in a realistic way, I think. Really. I think it's very persuasive, actually, if you think about it. We're all taught all these things. Oh, everybody's like this. But it's wrong, actually.